Hey everyone, and welcome to the next part of my card reviews. Apologies, I've been away, so these cards actually were released on Thursday, but I will be doing card reviews as they come out from now on. Starting tomorrow, there's going to be a live stream of card reviews from Blizzard, so I'll be reviewing all of those. But with that said, let's get straight into this week's cards. I've got 7 new ones to look at. Now, this first card is probably the craziest card Blizzard has ever printed. It's actually a really good one and a welcome addition to the game. When I say a good one, I don't mean competitive. I think it's a bad card that you wouldn't necessarily want to play competitively. But for the good of the game, I think it's excellent. And it's called Wizbang the Wonderful. It costs 4 mana, has 4 attack and 5 health. But the text reads, it's a legendary minion as well, but the text reads, you start the game with one of Wizbang's wonderful decks. So what that means is, you don't even need to have a deck. You just need this one card. You make your deck with this one card, and when you start the game, it gives you a random pre-made deck recipe from 18 different decks that Blizzard uses within the game. So what it means is that free-to-play players or new players, they can have playable decks all with just one card. Now, each deck that you play is random, so you don't get to choose it. That's why competitively it's not going to be very good. Also, the deck recipes aren't as strong as the tier 1 kind of constructed decks, so it's going to be bad competitively, but it's going to be a lot of fun. It'll be fun trying to climb the ladder playing with this card. I don't know whether it will be possible. I'm sure some people will be able to take it to Legend, but we'll see. But for new players, this is excellent because it allows them to learn new mechanics from the game. It also allows them to access to cards that they don't have. The deck recipes have loads of different cards that you'll be able to play with this. The only issue I can see with it really is for new players, it's going to be a bit difficult. They're not going to be able to get used to one deck. Each game they're going to be playing a completely different deck, so it's going to be harder to get used to it. But I think that's kind of irrelevant. I think this is a really good card for new players to learn the mechanics, learn the game, and a fun card for the rest of us to try, even if it's just going to be a bit memey. So moving on now, this next card is a Paladin rare card called Euler Module. Costs 4 mana, has 2 attack, 4 health, it's a mech, and it has Magnetic, which we've seen is going to be quite important for this expansion, Divine Shield, and Taunt. So this is effectively just double the stats of an Annoyatron, which we saw introduced in Goblins vs. Gnomes. And to me, the benefit of the Annoyatron was that you could play it really cheaply and just have a Taunt and Divine Shield. It was hard for your opponent to get through. So because of that, I think the Euler Module on its own is worse than the Annoyatron was, because you have to pay 4 mana. So you're still blocking your opponent's turn, but to be honest, it's not that hard to remove once you've got rid of the Divine Shield. So you actually probably get more of a benefit from playing a 2 mana Annoyatron, which of course is rotated out now. But of course, where this is better and has more potential is the fact that it's got Magnetic. So you could attach this to another mech that you've already got on the board. And I think Divine Shield is going to be a really important part of Magnetic, because if you've got a mech that survived the previous turn and you can put Divine Shield on it, when you trade that in, it's like a free trade. That mech that you've combined with doesn't actually lose any health because of the Divine Shield. So that's where it will be really good. To be honest, this card on its own isn't that great. It is going to be annoying for your opponent to remove, but it still costs you 4 mana. So not a great card. It might see some play in certain decks, but whether mechs will be seen in Paladin decks, we'll have to see when the full expansion comes out. But not a particularly exciting card, but one that kind of strengthens the magnetic mechanic. So moving on to Druid now, and this card is insane. It's called Libidinous Flute, so forever known as Flute from now on. He's a legendary. He costs 4 mana, 3 attack, and 4 health. And his effect is, while this is in your hand, this is a 3/4 copy of the last minion that you played. So what that means is that you have effectively a faceless manipulator which you can play of the previous minion. So what people are saying already, and what many people have pointed to, is that the Malygos is a perfect example of this. So previous turn, because it does survive over turns in your hand as the previous minion. So if you play Malygos for 9 mana, a lot of the reason why you don't do that is because you know your opponent's going to remove it. Well, you can play it for 9 mana, it gets removed. Then the next turn you just play Flute, and you've got, even though it's got a smaller body, it still has that +5 spell damage. So it's really strong. Man, this is going to be a really strong card for Druid for a long time. Think every single neutral or druid card that they print from now on, or druid minion or neutral minion, is they're going to have to really consider the fact that you can then play that again as Floop. Because let's just say if you're not playing Malygos, you could play it with Hadronox. One of the reasons you don't want to play your Hadronox too early is because potentially it can get removed and silenced or whatever. So you could play your Hadronox on turn 9, and then the next turn you can play another Hadronox as Floop, and it's got less health, so it's easier for you to kill, easier for you to trade into your opponent to get it to have that brilliant death rattle that we know that Hadronox has. Wow, really, really strong card, and it's a cool combo card. But Druid is one of the best classes right now, and this is just going to make it stronger, to be honest. I mean, Malygos Druid is already a tier 1 deck at the moment, and if you put this card in there, then it just makes it better, to be honest. The card art reminds me quite a lot of Virgil from Fallout 4, which is interesting, but another strong Druid card. Next up, we've got a Druid spell called Landscaping. It costs 3 mana. It's common, and what it does is it summons 2/2 Treants. So this is kind of, we've seen Treants in the game before, but when we look at this card and the next cards, you'll see that Blizzard is potentially trying to make more of a Hand Druid and Treant Druid kind of archetype here. And this spell's pretty good, to be honest. It's not one necessarily you would play right now, but maybe if Treant Druid becomes a thing, it would be quite a strong part of it, because what you're getting is for 3 mana, you're getting 4/4 in stats. So if you were to play a minion that is 3 mana 4/4, that is really quite strong. So playing a spell with 2 Treants, which will synergize with other cards that we'll look at the moment, actually it could be really quite strong. So Token Druid is definitely a thing in this expansion, in the Witchwood anyway, so potentially if that's still strong, then Treants could make their way into that deck. And if you look at this next one, this one's called Dendrologist. It costs 2 mana, it's a rare minion, 2 attack, 3 health. This is a really strong card if you play it within Treants, because Battlecry, if you control a Treant, discover a spell. So that can be really impressive, actually. We've seen the Discover mechanic is really, really strong. Discovering a spell is good. Raven Idol used to be played within Druid when that was back in the game. So this is a really good card. The issue with it is that it's unlikely that it's a card you would play on turn 2, because, I mean, if you do play it on turn 2, it's got a fairly standard body, so that's not going to be too much of an issue, but you're not going to be able to get the effect off, because unless they introduce some new spells, you're not on turn 1, you're unlikely to be able to have a Treant on the board to be able to play this on turn 2. But outside of that, really strong. Druid spells are good. There's a lot of good ones you can discover. Maybe you're looking for ramp, and just that ability to choose is really strong and have it in your hand. So I like this card. If Treant Druid becomes a thing, then yes, it will be played. If not, then sadly it won't. And another one that synergizes here, this is called Mulch Muncher. This one is 10 mana, 8/8, and a mech. It has Rush, which is we've seen as a very good mechanic, but it also costs 1 less for each friendly Treant that died this game. So again, this is making the Treant deck a little bit stronger. So, and these cards we've seen that you can have reduced costs can be really, really strong. So this one, it costs 1 less for each friendly Treant that died. It does only cost 10 mana initially, so you don't have to kill that many of them. But what I see here is this is probably more of a late game card, because we've seen the success of Mountain Giants, where you can play them in Warlock on turn 3 if you're playing even Lock, or turn 4, or even turn 5. But in a Treant deck, it might be quite difficult to reduce this to a low cost mana until much later in the game. However, if you top deck this on turn 10 and suddenly it's like a 2 mana 8/8 that you can charge, then that is really, really powerful. Of course, it's rare, so you can play 2 of these in your deck. So again, not going to be played unless Treant Druid is something that gets played, but there are a lot of ways to kill Treants and to summon them as well. So I think that this is quite a good card that will definitely go into that deck if it's strong enough. Moving on to Warrior now, and this is a 5 mana epic weapon called Supercollider. It only has 1 attack and 3 durability, so the stats of the weapon are pretty terrible, but it does have the text of after you attack a minion, force it to attack one of its neighbors. Now, the example that they used in the reveal video was they had 2 mountain giants on the board. You hit one of them, and then a mountain giant hits the other one and they die. But to be honest, that situation doesn't actually happen that often. But it shows the potential of the card, because what this can do is that it can help to kill minions behind taunts. So often if there's a really strong minion like Umbra or any other, like Flute for example, that's only 3-4, only got low health, and they put a big taunt in there to protect it so that they can have it for their next turn. Well, with the Supercollider you can hit the taunt and make the taunt kill whatever you want next to it. So when you think about it, you're doing 1 damage to the taunt minion from the weapon, plus the attack of the minion that it's going to attack, and then you're also doing the taunt minion's attack damage to that other minion. So it is quite a lot of damage you could get on the board depending on the minions that are there, but ultimately I think it's going to be quite situational. Some situations it just won't work, and others it will be excellent. Also, it says it attacks one of its neighbors, so if there's a minion either side of the taunt minion, it may not be able to attack the one that you want specifically. But if there isn't a taunt, then you can obviously maybe control it a bit better. Also, your opponent, if you're playing this, might have to think more about their positioning, which is pretty cool. So an okay weapon. I think for 5 mana it's quite expensive though. It's not as good as Garrosh's hero card power, which has the weapon that attacks minions either side of it as well. So not sure whether this one will be good enough. It's an epic card as well, so it's quite expensive, but we'll see. Okay guys, that's all the cards I've got to show today. I will be back tomorrow with another video after they do the live stream. We don't know how many cards that's going to be, but it's usually quite a few. And then after that, they kick off the daily reveal schedule, so I'll be doing more videos then. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.